It's one of the most unsettling stories you'll ever read. Forget horror movies, but forget thrillers. The story of Abraham and Isaac is deeply disturbing. It gets under your skin. A father, his son, a mountain, a knife, and a command from God that makes no sense. Let's be honest about it. If you read this story and it doesn't bother you, you might not be reading it right. It's supposed to be shocking. A good God asks a good man to do a terrible thing. He asks him to kill his own child, the child he waited a lifetime for, the child of promise. The question is simple. Why? Why would God test Abraham in this way? What was the point of this whole terrifying episode? This isn't a story with an easy, tidy answer. It's not a fable with a neat moral at the end. It's raw, it's real, and it forces us to ask some very hard questions about faith, trust, and the nature of God himself. To even begin to understand it, we have to go back. We have to understand who Abraham was, and more importantly, who Isaac was. Because Abraham wasn't just any man, he was the man God chose. He was living in a place called Ur, a sophisticated city full of people who worshipped all sorts of gods. Moon gods, sun gods, city gods. And out of all those people, God spoke to this one man, Abram. He gave him a staggering command and an even more staggering promise. Leave your country. Leave your people. Leave your father's house. Go to a land I will show you. And here's the promise: I will make you into a great nation. I will bless you. I will make your name great, and all peoples on earth will be blessed through you. Think about that for a second. Abraham had no children. His wife Sarai was barren. They were getting old. And God tells him he's going to be the father of a great nation, as numerous as the stars in the sky, as countless as the sand on the seashore. It was an impossible promise. It defied biology, logic, and common sense. But Abraham believed. He packed up everything he owned, and he went. He obeyed. And then he waited. The years turned into decades. Abraham and Sarah got older. And older, still no son. They were well past the age of childbearing. The promise started to look like a distant, faded dream. It's easy for us to read the story quickly, but imagine living it. Imagine holding on to a promise from God for 25 years with no evidence. The doubt must have been crushing. They even tried to help God out. Sarah, in her desperation, gave her servant Hagar to Abraham to have a child. That's where Ishmael came from. But God was clear. Ishmael was not the child of the promise. The covenant would come through a son born to Sarah, who was 90 years old. When God's messengers told Abraham that Sarah would have a son within the year, she overheard them from the tent. And she laughed. It wasn't a laugh of joy, it was the bitter, cynical laugh of someone whose hope had died. It was the laugh of impossibility. God heard her and asked, "Is anything too hard for the Lord?" And then it happened, the miracle. Isaac was born. His name literally means he laughs. Sarah's laugh of doubt was turned into a laugh of pure, unadulterated joy. He was here. The promise was real. God keeps his word. Isaac was not just a son, he was the son. And he was the living, breathing embodiment of God's promise. He was the future. The entire great nation, the blessing for the whole world, it was all wrapped up in this one boy. Without Isaac, the covenant was just empty words. He was everything. This is the context we need. We have to feel the weight of who Isaac was. He was the miracle child, the impossible dream come true, the focus of all of Abraham's hopes and God's promises. And then after years of watching this boy grow, after years of his laughter filling the camp, God speaks to Abraham again. And the words are chillin'. Take your son, okay? Your only son. Wait, what about Ishmael? God clarifies. You love Isaac. God knows exactly how deep the knife is turning. He's not being vague. He is specifying the precise nature of the sacrifice. This isn't just about a child. It's about the beloved one, the one who holds Abraham's heart. And go to the region of Moriah. Sacrifice him there as a burnt offering on a mountain I will show you. There it is. The command. It's monstrous. It's a direct contradiction of everything God has promised. God promised to build a nation through Isaac. Now God is commanding Abraham to extinguish that future. It's not just a test of obedience, it's a test of sanity. It asks Abraham to believe in a God who seems to have gone mad, a God who breaks his own promises. The next morning, Abraham gets up early. This detail is terrifying. He doesn't argue. He doesn't question. He doesn't rage at God like he did when he pleaded for the city of Sodom. There is just silence, a quiet, determined, horrifying obedience. He saddles his donkey. He takes 2 servants. He takes his son, Isaac, and he cuts the wood for the offering. And he prepares for the act. They travel for 3 days. Can you imagine those 3 days? The silence must have been deafening. What did they talk about? What did Abraham think about every time he looked at his son? Every step was a step closer to the unthinkable. This wasn't a crime of passion. It was a slow, deliberate walk toward a nightmare. This was 3 days for the reality to sink in. 3 days for Abraham to change his mind. 3 days of mental and spiritual agony. On the third day, Abraham sees the place in the distance. He tells his servants to wait. "We will go and worship," he says, "and then we will come back to you." We. He said, "We will come back." Did he believe God would raise Isaac from the dead? The New Testament book of Hebrews suggests he did. It says Abraham reasoned that God could raise the dead. Or was it just a desperate lie to the servants, a way to keep up a facade of normalcy? The text doesn't say. It just leaves that word hanging there. We. Then comes the most heartbreaking part of the journey. Isaac, the boy, is carrying the wood for his own sacrifice. He knows how sacrifices work. He's seen his father do it many times, and he notices something is missing. He turns to his father. "Father, yes, my son. The fire and the wood are here," Isaac said, "but where's the lamb for the burnt offering?" The innocence of the question is gut-wrenching, and Abraham's answer is a masterpiece of pain and faith. "God himself will provide the lamb for the burnt offering, my son." Was he prophesying? Was he just trying to reassure his son, or was it the deepest expression of a desperate, blind trust? Perhaps all three. They reach the place. Abraham builds an altar. He arranges the wood. And then he binds his son, Isaac. The text uses that specific word. He bound him. Isaac doesn't seem to fight. Maybe he was a young boy who could. Or maybe, in a moment of terrible understanding, he submitted. We don't know. Abraham lays his son on the wood. He reaches out his hand. He takes the knife. He is going to do it. His arm is raised. This is the point of no return. And at that exact moment, a voice cries out from heaven. "Abraham, Abraham, here I am," he replied. "Do not lay a hand on the boy," the angel of the Lord said. "Do not do anything to him. Now I know that you fear God, because you have not withheld from me your son, your only son." The test is over. The knife is lowered. Abraham looks up, and there in a thicket is a ram caught by its horns. But God did provide the lamb, a substitute. Abraham takes the ram and sacrifices it instead of his son. He names that place "the Lord will provide." So we come back to the question. Why? What was the point of all this trauma? The story gives us a clue right at the beginning. It says God tested Abraham. But what does that mean? Let's look at the possible reasons, because there isn't just one. First, the most common interpretation is that it was a test of faith and obedience. But we have to be careful here. Was it a test for God's benefit, so God could find something out? That doesn't seem right. An all-knowing God doesn't need to run experiments to see what people will do. And he already knows. So, the test wasn't for God, it was for Abraham, and for us. For Abraham, it was a moment that revealed the depth of his own faith to himself. It's one thing to say you trust God. It's another thing entirely to have that trust pushed to its absolute breaking point. This experience forged Abraham's faith into something unshakable. He had faced the ultimate contradiction, a God of promise commanding the end of that promise, and he had chosen to trust the giver more than the gift. He was willing to surrender the most precious thing in his life, the promise itself, back to the one who gave it. The test proved that Abraham's ultimate love and fear were reserved for God alone, not for the blessings God gave him. For us, the readers, Abraham becomes a model. He is the father of faith. His story is a stark example of what it means to trust God when nothing makes sense. It's a hard saying, a difficult story that sets the bar for what radical faith can look like. It shows that true faith isn't about feelings or understanding. It's about obedience in the face of the impossible and the incomprehensible. But there's another layer here, a crucial one that we often miss in our modern world. It has to do with the culture Abraham lived in. The ancient Near East was a brutal place. The surrounding nations, the Canaanites, the Phoenicians, they all worshipped gods who were cruel, demanding, and capricious. And one of the most horrifying practices of these religions was child sacrifice. They believed that sacrificing their firstborn son was the ultimate way to appease an angry god or secure a great blessing. It was a real and terrifying part of their world. Now look at the story again through that lens. God asks Abraham to do what the pagan gods of his neighbors demanded. He leads Abraham right up to the brink of performing a Canaanite ritual. Abraham is about to prove that his devotion to his God, Yahweh, is even greater than the devotion of the pagans to their gods. They sacrifice their children out of fear and superstition. Abraham is willing to do it out of pure, trusting love. But then, at the last possible second, God stops him. The voice from heaven is a thunderous declaration: I am not like those gods. I do not want human blood. I do not demand the life of your child. This story, which looks like a promotion of violence, might actually be the Bible's most powerful polemic against child sacrifice. It co-opts the form of the ritual only to shatter its substance. God is showing Abraham and all his descendants that he is a different kind of God. He is a God who provides a substitute. He provides the ram. He is a God of life, not death. In this reading, the test isn't about God's desire to see a child killed. It's about God's desire to show that he is fundamentally different from the idols of the world. He's teaching Abraham a profound theological lesson that would separate the Hebrew people from their neighbors forever. Our God provides. Our God saves. He doesn't devour our children. This leads us to a third deeply Christian interpretation of the story. For centuries, Christians have seen this event as a foreshadowing, a divine drama that points forward to an even greater sacrifice on another hill. Look at the parallels. A father is asked to sacrifice his beloved, one of Achan's son. The son carries the wood for his own sacrifice up the hill. The location, Moriah, is traditionally believed to be the same mountain range where Jerusalem would later be built, the very place where the temple would stand, and near where Jesus would be crucified. Isaac asks, "Where is the lamb?" Abraham replies, "God will provide the lamb." And for Christians, this is exactly what happened 2,000 years later. John the Baptist saw Jesus and declared, "Behold, the Lamb of God who takes away the sin of the world." On that same mountain range, God did provide the ultimate sacrifice, but this time there was no substitute ram in the thicket. This time, the Father did not stop the sacrifice. He allowed his own son, his only son, whom he loved, to go through with it. In the story of Abraham, the son is spared. In the story of Jesus, the son is crushed. Abraham was asked to give up his son. God actually gave up his. The story of Abraham and Isaac is a shadow. The story of Jesus on the cross is the reality it was pointing to. So from this perspective, the test of Abraham was not just about Abraham. It was part of God's grand, unfolding plan of salvation. It was a preview, a trailer for the main event. It was meant to prepare humanity to understand the cost of sin and the incredible nature of God's love, a love that would provide his own son as the lamb. But we can't just leave it there with these neat theological answers. We have to go back to the human element, because the story leaves us with some deeply uncomfortable loose ends. What about Isaac? The story is told from Abraham's point of view. We focus on his faith, his test. But what about the boy who was tied up and laid on an altar with a knife at his throat, held by his own father? The text is hauntingly silent about his experience. It doesn't tell us what he thought or felt. After the angel intervenes, the Bible says, Abraham returned to his servants. It doesn't mention Isaac walking back with him. The next time we see Isaac, he is a grown man. Jewish tradition has a lot to say about this silence. Some ancient rabbis wrote that Isaac was, in fact, killed and then resurrected. Others suggest the trauma was so profound that it scarred him for life, creating a distance between him and his father that never healed. Can you blame him? How do you ever look at your father the same way again? How do you trust a God who would ask for that? The story doesn't clean up its own psychological mess. It leaves the trauma there for us to grapple with. And what about Sarah? She is completely absent from the narrative. Did Abraham tell her where he was going? Honey, I'm taking our miracle son up the mountain to kill him as a sacrifice. I'll be back in a few days. It seems impossible. He almost certainly left in secret. The very next story in the book of Genesis is the death of Sarah. The Jewish tradition directly connects the two events. The Midrash tells a story where Satan comes to Sarah and tells her what Abraham is doing. The shock and horror of it, they say, is what killed her. Whether that's true or not, her absence in the story is significant. This monumental event in the life of her family, centered on her only child, happens without her knowledge. It highlights the lonely, isolating nature of Abraham's test. He had to walk this path completely alone. And finally, we have to confront the hardest question of all. What kind of God is this? Even with all the theological explanations, a test of faith, a rejection of child sacrifice, a foreshadowing of Christ's story is still troubling. It can portray God as a celestial taskmaster, playing cruel games with his followers just to see how they'll react. It can feel manipulative and psychologically damaging. This is where honesty is crucial. It's okay to struggle with this story. In fact, it's necessary. Faith isn't about having all the easy answers. It's about wrestling with the hard questions. And the God of the Bible is not a tame, safe, predictable God. He is often portrayed as wild, mysterious, and terrifying. His ways are not our ways. Perhaps the point of the story is not to give us a comfortable portrait of God. Perhaps the point is to shatter our comfortable assumptions. The test forces Abraham and us to confront a God who is sovereign over all things, even life and death, even his own promises. It demands a level of trust that goes beyond logic, beyond reason, beyond our own survival instinct. It asks, do you trust the character of God even when his commands seem to contradict that character? Do you believe he is good even when his actions appear terrible? The story doesn't resolve this tension easily, which presents it. Here is the command. Here is the obedience. Here is the last-minute deliverance. The story shows us that the path of faith sometimes leads through the valley of the shadow of death, through experiences that make no sense and feel like a betrayal. But it also shows that on the other side of that test, there is provision. There is a deeper knowledge of God. Now I know that you fear God, the angel says, and the name of the place becomes a testament. The Lord will provide. Abraham didn't know how God would provide. He just trusted that he would. So, why did God test Abraham with Isaac? He did it to reveal to Abraham the strength of his own faith, forging it in the fire of an impossible choice. He did it to make a powerful statement against the horrific practice of child sacrifice, drawing a line in the sand between himself and the brutal gods of the pagan world. He did it to paint a prophetic picture, a shadow of the ultimate sacrifice he himself would one day make, providing his own son as the lamb for the whole world. And he did it to show us the nature of radical trust, a trust that holds on to the giver, even when it means letting go of the gift, a trust that obeys even when it cannot understand. It is a shocking story. It's meant to be. It's a story that's both terrible and beautiful, disturbing and profound. It doesn't give us a God we can easily put in a box. It gives us a God who is worthy of our fear, our worship, and our absolute unconditional trust. And it leaves us with the same question it asked Abraham on that mountain. What is the one thing you love most? The one thing you think you can't live without? Are you willing to place it on the altar?